Shannon, what did you make of the shots that George Karl took at Carmelo?
If it was unnecessary, George, let it go. I understand it didn't end, Carmelo forced his way out of Denver.
Yep.
And basically ended his George Karl's career in Denver.
He did.
Because he was a superstar and he went to the Knicks. And maybe that rubbed George the wrong way. We know Carmelo was never the greatest defensive player. Didn't focus a whole lot on that side of the ball. But now is not the time. That happened so long ago, George, and you still harboring that. And now I see why Boogie Cousins keep, every time you mention somebody mentioned Boogie Cousins' name, he put the little emoji snake in there. Because you keep stuff going, bro. Let this go. Y'all grown. He's moved on. You've moved on. There was no need for you to interject into this. Where Carmelo is, he's at a different place in his life. And he says, you know what? I understand. It's hard to get a guy that's trying to make a name for himself, Skip, to see, because Carmelo is a bona fide scorer. And to try to get him to be something, to be an overall player, this is what I want to do. We'll focus on that. He was young. And now he realizes it takes more than just offense to win a championship. It takes sacrifice.
Yep.
And I'm not so sure that young guys understand the sacrifice that it takes to win a championship. But as they get older and the opportunities start to draw up, they start to understand these are some of the things I'm going to have to do. But Skip, I thought this was very unnecessary. What? Very unnecessary. He didn't need to do this.
Okay, so I know George Karl pretty well, spent a lot of time around him in our days at ESPN. I knew him before ESPN when he was a head coach for many years. And as you know, he played for the team you grew up loving, North Carolina. He played for the great Dean Smith. So he learned to play basketball the right way. As Larry Brown did, the right way, playing for Dean Smith. So Carmelo drove him crazy because he saw so much in Carmelo that wasn't broad enough. He had so many other talents that he couldn't exploit because Carmelo focused on one thing and one thing only, and it was scoring the basketball, and he could score it. So he played 8 seasons in Denver. Were you there some of those years? Yeah, you were. Okay, so Carmelo averaged 25 points a game over 8 seasons. Pretty great.
Yeah, pretty good.
6 rebounds and only 3 assists. The first thing George told me about Carmelo that he said he often told Carmelo, you could average 10 assists a night if you so chose. You would have to focus on that side of the offense.
He might not average 25 points in 10.
He might not, but knowing Carmelo, he would have a chance. The other thing was 6 rebounds a game, not bad, but George said, with that body that you have and the natural strength you have, you could average 10 a game if you would focus on that part of that aspect of offense, And then you brought up the defense. It was just an afterthought to Carmelo. He just wasn't interested at all at that end of the floor, right? So that drove George and the coaching staff nuts. I agree with you. It's so long ago that it's still haunting George, but George was responding to Carmelo saying it's keeping him up at night that he doesn't have a ring. Well, how close did they come? That one year, they got to Kobe's Lakers in the conference finals. And what happened in that year? And you might remember that team. That team had Kenyon and Chauncey.
They took a game from the Lakers.
Well, they went all the way to Game 6. You know, they got closed out in Game 6 at home. By the way, Denver had Dante Jones, and they had J.R. Smith and Birdman coming off the bench. So Nene is there. So it's a pretty good basketball team, right? So it's Game 6 is in Denver, and it becomes the closeout game because they got blown out at home. So what happened in that game? Carmelo scored 25 points, but he had 2 rebounds and 2 assists. I'm sure that just drove George crazy. And he shot 6 of 17 from the floor. He got to the free throw line, made 12 of 15. But Kobe scored 35 in that game with 6 rebounds and 10 assists and took the game over. From Carmelo in Carmelo's house. And they just romped and won and went on and wiped out Orlando in 5 games in the finals. When everybody thought it was going to be, obviously, LeBron versus Kobe in the finals.
But, Skip, I mean, if you think about it, look, the Spurs. The Spurs was in their heyday. They wasn't getting past the Spurs. And then once they got Powell, they wasn't getting past the Lakers. But they make it seem like, well, if Carmelo would have done this, y'all wasn't getting past him dunking.
I got it. There's truth to what George is saying about Carmelo, but it's old, too old truth, right?
We've all been around people. I played with guys, and I told them, do you realize how special you could be if you did this, this, and this?
Precisely.
They don't realize it. They get older, they're like, man, you know what? You were right.
And Clinton Portis. Help anyone to say that stuff about him now as he's trying to continue. Thank you for watching. You can subscribe here to get the latest from the show, and be sure to check out more of the best clips from Undisputed, or go watch a few other segments from our other shows on FS1.